and welcome back to Bookish Theories. In today's video, we'd like to talk about ENHYPEN's Dark Moon special, focusing on a little breakdown of the 4 Dark Blood chapters to see how they are connected to the story told in the album. Now, in case you missed it, Weavers released 4 new exclusive chapters of Dark Moon: The Blood Altar, with the Wattpad version already completed, the webtoon still ongoing, and the cartoon showing up time and time again. Continuity was already fighting for its life in this story, and with this new limited edition, it will keep on fighting for the foreseeable future. This is because while this limited release further expands on some parts of the lore, it does change some events to make the story fit Dark Blood. They're kind of meant to bridge the gap between the two stories, if you will. So today we're going to take a look at these new episodes and analyze them in the context of both the album and the Blood Altar. Now, episode 1 is called On My Neck, and it's a chapter that references the title track Bite Me. In On My Neck we're back in the past, so at this point Princess Selene is still alive, and the 7 knights are yet to become vampire lords. In the webtoon, the boys became vampires off screen following the orders of Selene's mother, the queen, but in this version of events, the knights beg the princess to bite them so they can be strong enough to fight. This chapter is set in Ashana Castle, which is the royal residence of Princess Selene. Right at the beginning, we see that she's dressed in black, which actually implies that in this version of events, the queen is already dead and the princess is in mourning. As the rightful heir to the throne, Selene now has to deal with Chancellor Dardan, who is about to stage a coup in order to take power. Following the webtoon, Dardan stole the blood of Vargar and drank it in order to become powerful. This is a wolf god whose blood was also able to heal Selene from the sickness she was born with, but if the princess was worthy of this gift and was given consent by Vargar, Dardan actually stole it out of greed. Since he was unworthy of drinking the blood of the god, this power corrupted him into becoming a vampire cursed to be burned by sunlight and always longing for human blood. The more Dardan fed on people, the more people became drifters following his orders. So in On My Neck we see the citizens trying to evacuate the capital because they know that a coup is around the corner. In the story, Selene told the knights to leave as well, but the boys decided to stay and fight for the princess. To prove their loyalty, the boys offered themselves up and asked to be beaten in order to become vampire lords, but Selene initially refuses. She's scared that the knights will become bloodthirsty vampires like the people turned by Dardan, but Eli actually proves otherwise. In a previous confrontation, Eli was wounded and his blood came into contact with Selene's. Instead of turning into an evil creature, this event healed him and transformed him into a powerful entity, and in the chapter, Eli proves his point by cutting himself with his sword and showing his fresh wound disappear in front of their eyes. This goes to show that if Dardan's bite corrupts people because he was unworthy of receiving the blood, Selene's blood has healing properties because she is worthy of Vargar's power and she's strong enough to use it well. Because of that, the knights have nothing to fear. Selene is the chosen one, the rightful heir to the throne, and they themselves are worthy enough to fight for her cause. Seeing that Eli is unaffected by her blood, Selene decides to honor their request and bite them like they want. They go to Vargar's temple, like in Drunken Days the princess stands on the blood altar, and the boys become vampire lords after receiving her divine blood. Like they told us in Bite Me, this event binds them across time and space. Even if in this life Dardan ends up winning, even if the princess dies, and even if they get sent to the future with no memory of what took place, their blood connection is stronger than death. Selene's mark on their soul lives on, so the moment she's born again as Sua and they reunite, the knights remember their promise and accept the destiny they chose. This leads us to episode 2, Take My Hand, which in turn is a reference to the song Sacrifice. As a follow-up to Bite Me, Sacrifice focuses on them wanting to prove their devotion after awakening their faith by remembering their past. To escape oblivion once and for all, the knights now offer themselves up as a sacrifice to their princess, because fulfilling their role is the only thing that can honor their promise. In the story, their mission to protect the princess is their life purpose, and in episode 2 we see that this fate was calling them even in moments they didn't remember it yet. Now the second episode brings us right back to Vanfield House, which is the orphanage they grew up in their second life. Following the orders of the princess, the vampire lord Marge waited for the knights to show up again and then brought them to the orphanage to protect them until the right time. Brought there as children, the boys eventually grew to reach the age they were where Selene turned them into vampires. Without knowing their identity and purpose, the boys lived at the orphanage for over a century, but one day day, Dardan's drifters attacked the house and set it on fire. After a century of uneventful peace, the boys were forced to run away without knowing why, but things became clearer when they met Sua and she looked exactly like the princess of their dreams. If in Dark Blood the characters were cursed to wander as they were drowning in the waters of oblivion, episode 2 shows us their struggles with forgetfulness, because in this chapter the boys are drawn by a destiny they cannot even remember. They have a mission they forgot, they have a purpose but no memory of what it was, so we see them struggling in a limbo like the one shown in Sacrifice. Now in the episode, Ellie reveals that he was the first to be found by Marge, and during his lonely stay he remembers other children as well as a girl that looked very familiar. Looking at this flashback, we can assume that the young girl might have been Sua, maybe passing by with her own family, maybe as an early guest of the orphanage. To be fair, this early encounter doesn't really fit the timeline we saw in the story so far, but then again neither does episode 1. As I mentioned before, continuity isn't really the priority here. The point is to show that even before meeting Sua, the boys are kinda haunted by the trace of the princess. They might not remember her, they might not know who they are, but the blood connection they share is stronger than time, space and memory. In the episode, the Shion actually mentions déjà vus as a way to explain Hailey's impression of the girl, but their longing for the princess is something that has been haunting them all their lives. When he was a child, for instance, Noah was surprised by Marge while he was crying at the moon. During the night, sometimes he got scared, sometimes he liked it, but the sight of the moon always made him miss somebody he didn't even remember. Now, since Selene is a name that recalls the Greek goddess of the moon, Noah is probably missing the princess herself here, thus showing yet again that their connection goes beyond time and space. This is a feeling that all of them have felt at some point in their second life, so as they emerge from the oblivion of forgetfulness, they promise to sacrifice everything in order to bring back the person that was so special to them. Now episode 3 is called Dance for Me, and it actually refers to the song Chacon. In this episode, we dive a bit deeper in the relationship between Hailey and Selene, who are almost portrayed as star-crossed lovers who cannot be together in one life, but are reunited by fate in the next. The chapter is set during a ball at Ashana Castle. We see that the queen is still alive at this point, but according to Shion, Selene already drank the blood of Varger. If we follow the timeline of the webtoon, the princess was healed 1 year prior the queen's death, so the ball must be set sometime after she was cured. The events of episode 1 are still a few months away, and this is also confirmed by the fact that Dardan is still human and is still trying to get close to Selene like a normal person. Now in this episode, we see that Selene and Hailey have feelings for each other, but their official positions keep them from revealing their true emotions. Hailey is a knight, but Selene is the princess, the heir to the throne. She's the recipient of the blood of Varger, and she's said to inherit the shamanic powers of her mother. She's everything and he's just Ken, so even if the other knights are supportive and both of them are interested in one another, Hailey keeps his distance because he thinks he's not enough for her. If Hailey is hesitant, however, the other men in the court sure aren't, so Selene is surrounded by suitors that ask her to dance. These are all trash men that don't deserve her. One gossips about her, the other is Dardan, and we all know he sucks. And even if Selene would like Hailey to ask her to dance, in this life he never does. When they meet again in the future, however, Hailey and Sua finally have their chance. Even if they share their first dance in their second life, both of them feel like they wanted to do this for a long time, so like in Chacon, their dance kinda seals the romantic connection between the two. Now in the song, their dance is a dance of death. It's much darker because it describes a more obsessive, passionate and intoxicating type of love, so in the episode, this dance and what it represents is kind of toned down for younger audiences. Despite of that, the episode references Chacon in the title, subject matter, as well as the link at the end, so it's implied that the dance is kind of a metaphor for them finally indulging in their true feelings. Last but not least, we finally get to episode 4 Through It All, which in turn references the song Karma and to an extent also the song Fate. As the track that concludes Dark Blood, Karma doubles down on the knight's devotion towards their loved one and also confirms that no matter what people say their destiny should be, their karma is in the blood that connects them through time and space. Now, karma is actually very important to understand the point of Dark Blood, because it concludes a journey that first started with fate. You see, at first glance, fate and karma seem to refer to the same thing, but if you think about it, there is one major difference. Fate is a destiny that is forced on you. It's predetermined and therefore impossible to change. But karma is a destiny that depends on your choices. It's your actions that create your karma. So even if at first the knight's journey seemed decided by fate, their devotion towards their loved one made them actively choose this path no matter the cost. This is a story about destiny, yes, but it's a destiny that they chose every step of the way. They could have ran away like Selen said, they could have saved themselves, they could have asked her not to bite them, but they didn't. So their karma, that is, the destiny they chose, is indeed in the blood that connects them. In the Dark Moon special, this comparison between fate and karma is perfectly conveyed in the final episode. At the beginning, this chapter opens with Ailey and Selen being introduced as children, so we can say that this is the part where fate was involved. Their first encounter was not a matter of karma, it was a matter of fate, because it was something destined to happen and out of their hands. When the Queen appoints Ailey as Selen's official playmate, their roads are united by fate, and they grow up side by side without much choice to decide otherwise. When they grow up, however, it's different. As we saw in episode 1, Ailey and the other knights actively choose to stay by her side, and their intention to keep their promise gets even stronger in their second life. In the final part of the chapter, for instance, we see that the story connects us right back to episode 44 of the webtoon. Sue has been taken by Dardan, and the knights are on their quest to find her after finally understanding her true identity. Even if at this point their memories are still unclear and they don't remember everything that happened, they do remember enough for them to figure out that she was the one who gave them their powers and her blood. Sue is the reincarnation of their sire. She was the one who made them vampires and gave them their powers, so finally understanding their connection, the knights promise to do everything in order to find her. The episode ends with Ailey saying that this is their fate, but as I mentioned before, it is also their karma, because their destiny in this life is the result of their choices in the previous one. It's a fate they chose the moment they asked her to bite them, when they decided to offer themselves as a sacrifice, and when they decided to dance the dance of death. All in all, this limited release was meant to bridge the gap between Dark Blood and the ever-expanding Dark Moon universe, but to see what else is in store for us, we'll have to wait and see. In the meantime, however, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please think about liking and subscribing. As always, thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.